Yeah, so I'm Kevin Frea and I live in Holton near Lancaster, and I'm talking to you from Holton Mill, and it's currently running on electricity from our local hydro, which I was involved in raising the money for and building and running. And I'd like to start with telling you about where I live, because it's a microcosm of what is possible, in that we have built 41 houses to Passive House standard. And when I say we all got together and found a builder to build it. And it was a builder who didn't have experience of doing this. So it's really important that everybody, all your local companies get upskilled in how to build more sustainably. So Passive House standard means that the houses need very little energy to run. Our heating bill is less than £100 a year because we don't need much heat. In fact, if somebody wants to, if somebody's house is a bit cold, the best thing they can do is to invite somebody else round. And we reckon that every person who comes into a house probably raises the temperature about half a degree centigrade. So they're very well insulated, triple glazed windows. But also we get our electricity from a community-owned hydro on the river. So 430 people got together to raise £1.3 million to build it. And we also have lots of solar panels on the roof, though obviously we're not getting our electricity from there. So there are lots of councils around the country who are doing various aspects of this. Nottingham is a place I've visited where they're retrofitting quite a lot of houses to close to Passive House standard. It's hard to get them retrofitted to the Passive House standard, but it's possible.
What's retrofitted, Kevin?
Yeah, right. Retrofitted is where you take an existing house and you add insulation, you add solar panels, you add things onto it to get it close to zero carbon. And they also are when they build new developments, they always make sure that they're integrated with renewable energy, mainly solar panels, because it's a city, so they don't have the places for wind turbines. And we get our heat from a biomass boiler. Now, we wouldn't do that again, one, because the boiler's far too big for the amount of heat we need, but we would, if we did it in future, probably go with ground source heat pumps. So you'll hear a lot about heat pumps in the future, because the government have said that by 2025, no new houses are to have be on the gas grid, because gas being a fossil fuel isn't a good idea. So houses will have heating either by directly electricity or by a heat pump, and the heat pump takes heat either from the air or from the ground. So a number of councils now are putting heat pumps ground source heat pumps into leisure centres, where we're going to do that in Lancaster, into blocks of flats and things like that. And they literally sink a lot of pipes into the ground that take the heat from the ground and up into the building. So that's something that you really they've been around a long time. It's very old technology. A lot of the renewable technology is actually very old technology. Wind turbines, of course, wind has been around powering things for a very long time. Water has, solar is perhaps a bit newer. But one of the things I wanted to get across is that the future of energy is not going to be the same as the past. We can't just take fossil fuels, replace them with renewables. As you probably know, they're intermittent. The wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. But our whole grid, our whole energy system is based on having power stations, big power stations in a small number of places, and getting the electricity around the country. And that's going to have to change. You'll hear the word smart grids a lot. where you're trying to use electricity as locally as possible. One of the things that local authorities would love to do, they do it in Germany, they do it in lots of places, is take over the electricity grid for their place. And that gives councils then a lot more control, but that's not currently possible in Britain. It has been possible for councils to set up their own energy company, and Bristol have done it and Nottingham have done it. But again, the odds are stacked against them working. It's only the big six that are profitable, really, and one or two of the smaller companies. But most smaller energy companies make a loss, and currently both Nottingham's and Bristol's are in the process of either being sold or going bust. So unfortunately, taking control of the energy supply, either by taking over the grid or by setting up an energy company, isn't an option for councils at the moment. And that's a choice that the government have made. It's possible in other countries. There are other ways, though, in which you can't just replace fossil fuels by renewables. And as I'm sure you've already been told, we have to stop using fossil fuels. We have to leave 80% of the fossil fuels we know about in the ground. So renewable energy is not as good. We've been very lucky in that we've been able to build our whole industrial civilization on very cheap, starting with coal and now with gas and with oil. And I'm just going to mention something called energy return on energy invested, because it's a really important concept. When we first started using coal and oil, it was very easy to get it out of the ground. And you could put 1 unit of energy in to get it out, and you'd get 100 units back. Now that's been deteriorating across time. The oil's been harder to get out. Oil shale is disastrous in that respect. The coal has obviously been harder to get out the ground. So that return has diminished. Renewables don't have such a good energy return on investment as fossil fuels on the whole. Wind is the best. Solar PV, not so good a return. When you take into account not just the cost of running it, which is quite low, but also the cost of all the materials that go into creating it. So the future really for Britain, most of its energy should come from wind in the future, and that's both onshore, which is probably the cheapest form of renewable energy, and offshore. And again, quite a lot of councils have done various things with renewables. In Lancaster, we're building a big solar farm to power the leisure centre. And here we use the electricity directly from the hydro, and the leisure centre will be using the electricity directly from the solar farm. So it'll go in, it won't go into the grid, it will go into the leisure centre, and then the rest of it will get sold to the grid. That's a very good way to use renewable energy, to use it as close to the source as possible. Other councils like Warrington have invested lots of money in solar in other parts of the country. If you're in the north, it makes sense to invest in solar energy in the south because there's more sunshine. But it's really important that we can't just replace what we're using. We have to cut our energy use in half, really, in Britain. There's a report called Zero Carbon Britain, which gives you a whole model for how we can run Britain on renewable heat and renewable electricity, but it relies on us using about 50% less. So it relies on us insulating our homes and just generally cutting down on the amount that we use. Going back to insulating homes for a bit, you've probably heard that the government have just come up with £2 billion for homeowners, or landlords, or local authorities to use to insulate their homes or to buy heat pumps. And there are still subsidies called the renewable heat incentive if you install a heat pump in your home. So the government have done that, which is a good thing. Not so good is the fact that the money all has to be spent by the end of March. So it's going to be quite difficult. There aren't the skilled workmen out there to install all of the things that need to install. And of course, installing insulation, if you're doing it, if you're external wall insulation, if you're doing that in the winter, you need it to be a bit drier than it's going to be in our winter. So we still haven't we're still not taking seriously the need to insulate the homes that are the worst for energy efficiency in the whole of Europe. But councils all around the country are doing what they can. So Lancaster is doing it, I'm sure South Lakes is doing it. You've got Cumbria Action for Sustainability who will be helping them to do it. They're a brilliant organisation, and they'll be helping to provide advice to householders who contact the council. They'll be providing details of what can and should be done to spend that money. But it's a subsidy that you'll get 2/3 back of the money you spend up to 5,000, and if you're on various benefits, then you can get up to £10,000 without having to pay a penny for it. So councils can do a lot to help people know what they need to do. They can do a lot to invest in renewable energy and to build renewable energy. They've already done a lot in insulating their own homes, if they've still got them, like Lancaster House, council houses. Our council houses are better insulated than most of the private houses. But we have a massive job on our hands if we're going to stop using fossil fuels as soon as possible. And the longer it takes us to do it, the more fossil fuel we're going to have to use, and the more we're going to contribute to global warming. So it can't be done without the skills, it can't be done without the money to do it. And what you'll find is that as councils come up with action plans to implement their climate emergency plans, they're going to be doing something about energy, about heat, and about electricity at the top of their priority list.
You've got 2 minutes left, Kevin.
Okay, so councils can also help with partnering with local community groups. So Portsmouth, for example, have helped with a community energy company so that they can jointly do things, so that the community energy company can help to fund things and build things, but the council can put their weight behind it. So there are lots of partnering and community opportunities that councils can do as well. But anyway, I'm certainly open to questions, and I'm sure Jill will be able to add to that as well. So thank you very much.